The Sunday family dinner had been going normally until Marcus walked in with that familiar smirk plastered across his face. My older brother had always carried himself with an air of superiority, but today it radiated from him like heat from asphalt in August. He dropped his keys on the hallway table with deliberate loudness, making sure everyone in the dining room heard his entrance. Well, Marcus announced, sauntering into the room where Mom, Dad, and our sister Jennifer sat around the table. Looks like I just made the smartest business decision this family has seen in years. Dad looked up from his pot roast with mild interest. Marcus loved his dramatic announcements and our father had learned to indulge them. What's that, son? Marcus pulled out his phone, opening his banking app with a flourish. He turned the screen toward the table, displaying a recent deposit. $5,000. Deposited this morning. 5,000. Jennifer's eyes widened. From what? From finally doing what needed to be done, Marcus said, his gaze sliding toward me with undisguised contempt. From selling off Jamie's ridiculous collection of junk that's been taking up space in the garage for the past 3 years. I looked up from my phone where I'd been typing steadily, my fingers moving across the screen with practiced efficiency. You did what? Oh, don't give me that shocked face, Marcus scoffed, pulling out a chair and sitting down like he owned the place, which in his mind he probably thought he did. That collection of yours has been sitting there gathering dust since you moved back home. Old prototypes, random tech parts, boxes of circuits and weird devices nobody understands. I finally found a buyer who saw value in it. Marcus, I said carefully, still typing on my phone, those weren't mine to sell. Not yours. He laughed, that sharp barking sound that had annoyed me since childhood. They've been in Mom and Dad's garage for 3 years. He never even looked at them. Just boxes and boxes of your weird tech hobby stuff that you abandoned when your little startup dream didn't work out. Mom reached over and patted Marcus's hand. Honey, maybe you should have asked Jamie first. Asked. Marcus's voice rose with indignation. I'm 32 years old, Mom. I don't need permission to clean out junk from my parents' garage. Besides, Jamie's been living here rent-free for 3 years. The least he could do is not treat the place like a storage unit. Dad nodded slowly, cutting another piece of meat. Marcus has a point, Jamie. You've been back home since your company thing fell apart. We've been patient, but you can't just store whatever you want here indefinitely. My company thing didn't fall apart, I said quietly, my thumbs still moving across my phone screen. And those items weren't storage. They were inventory. Jennifer laughed, nearly choking on her wine. Inventory? Jamie, you don't have a company anymore. You've been working some vague remote consulting job for the past 3 years and living in your childhood bedroom. Let's not pretend those boxes were anything important. I made $5,000, Marcus repeated as if the number justified everything. $5,000 from literal garbage. You should be thanking me. I probably got more than that junk was worth. Who did you sell it to? I asked, my voice level, my eyes not leaving my phone. Some tech collector I found online, Marcus said dismissively. Guy calls himself a vintage tech enthusiast. He drove up from Portland this morning, looked through everything and paid cash on the spot. Said something about reselling it to hobbyists or something. I don't know, I don't care. $5,000 is $5,000. Did you get his information? I asked. Name? Contact details. Why would I need his contact details? Marcus's irritation was growing. The transaction is done, Jamie. I sold junk, I got paid, and now Mom and Dad's garage has space again. You're acting like I committed some crime. I looked up from my phone for the first time since the conversation started, meeting Marcus's eyes directly. You sold company property, prototype technology, development hardware, testing equipment. Every single item in those boxes was logged, serialized, and tracked by my employer. The table went quiet for a moment. Then Marcus laughed again, but it sounded slightly less confident. Your employer? Jamie, you work from home doing whatever it is you do on your laptop. You're not some corporate executive with company property. I'm the Chief Technology Officer of Meridian Innovations, I said calmly, returning my attention to my phone. I have been for the past 3 years. The items you sold were prototype development units worth approximately $3.7 million. They were on loan to me for long-term testing and development. Every single piece was cataloged as active company assets. The silence that followed was deafening. Jennifer was the first to break it, her voice uncertain. Jamie, that's not funny. I'm not joking, I replied, still typing. I've been working remotely for Meridian since I joined them 3 years ago. The company specializes in advanced computing hardware and AI integration systems. Those boxes of junk contained 17 prototype processing units, 12 neural network integration modules, and 8 quantum computing interface devices. Each prototype alone is worth between $100,000 and $300,000. Dad set down his fork. Jamie, if this is some kind of joke. It's not a joke, Dad, I interrupted, my voice remaining steady. I'm currently messaging our corporate security team and asset protection division. I've already sent them the address and situation details. They're coordinating with local law enforcement right now. Marcus's face had gone from confident red to uncertain pale. You're blowing this way out of proportion. They were just old computer parts. They were proprietary technology, I corrected. Some of those prototypes contain chip architectures that won't be publicly available for another 5 years. The neural network modules use algorithms that are patent pending. The quantum interface devices are literally one of a kind at this stage of development. You didn't sell junk, Marcus. You sold cutting-edge corporate assets that were entrusted to my care. But you kept them in a garage, Jennifer protested, though her voice had lost its earlier mockery. If they were so valuable, why were they just sitting there? Because I was conducting long-term stability testing, I explained patiently. Meridian's products need to perform reliably in various environmental conditions. I had authorization to keep them in a climate-controlled storage area, which the garage is, thanks to the HVAC system I installed 2 years ago specifically for that purpose. Every device was monitored remotely. I have access logs, temperature records, and performance data for every single unit. Mom's hand had moved to her mouth. Honey, why didn't you tell us? We thought you were just... We didn't know you had an important job. You didn't ask, I said simply. I tried to explain my work a few times when I first moved back, but everyone seemed to think working from home meant unemployed. I stopped trying to correct the assumption. Marcus stood up abruptly, his chair scraping against the floor. This is ridiculous. You can't prove any of this. They looked like old computer parts because they were old computer parts. You're making up this story to make me look bad. I don't need to make up anything, I replied, finally looking up from my phone and meeting his eyes. Everything I've said is documented. Meridian Innovations has my employment contract, my assignment to the prototype testing program, and detailed asset logs showing every single item that was in your care. Or rather, in Mom and Dad's garage under my supervision. Under your supervision? Dad's voice was quiet now, processing. Jamie, are you saying you've had millions of dollars worth of equipment stored in our garage this whole time? With proper insurance, security monitoring, and environmental controls, yes, I confirmed. The company trusted me with it because I've been their CTO since they recruited me 3 years ago. My failed startup, as everyone here loved to call it, was actually acquired by Meridian. I came with the acquisition as part of the deal. They brought me on specifically because of my expertise in neural network integration. Jennifer's voice was barely a whisper. How much do you make? That's not relevant right now, I said, redirecting the conversation. What's relevant is that Marcus just sold stolen property. Technically, he didn't steal it himself, he genuinely didn't know what it was. But the moment he sold items from this property without verifying ownership, he became liable for the transaction. Marcus had sat back down, but his hands were shaking slightly. I didn't know. How was I supposed to know? You could have asked me, I said simply. You could have sent me a text message, an email, or simply walked upstairs and knocked on my bedroom door. Instead, you assumed, as you've all assumed for 3 years, that because I work quietly and don't broadcast my life, I must be failing. We just thought, Mom started, but I held up a hand gently. I know what you thought. It's fine. I don't need validation from family dinners or approval from people who never asked about my actual work. What I do need is for Marcus to tell me exactly who he sold that equipment to, what information he provided them, and whether any documentation was transferred. I don't have his contact information, Marcus admitted, his voice much quieter now. He paid cash. I didn't even get his real name, he said to call him Mike. He had a white van, no company logo. He paid in hundreds. I closed my eyes briefly, processing this information. So you sold $3.7 million worth of proprietary technology to a man named Mike, who paid in cash and drove away in an unmarked van. I didn't know. Marcus's voice was rising with panic now. How the hell was I supposed to know you had millions of dollars worth of equipment in those boxes? They looked like garbage. They looked like advanced technology, I corrected. They had serial numbers, manufacturer marks, and some of them had Meridian Innovations logos clearly visible. You didn't look because you didn't care. You saw an opportunity to make some quick money and you took it without any consideration for whether those items belonged to you. Dad cleared his throat. Jamie, son, I think we need to understand something. Are you really the chief technology officer of a major company? Because if you are, why have you been living here in your old bedroom? Because I can work from anywhere, I explained, and when Meridian first acquired my startup I was going through a divorce. I needed a place to stay temporarily while I sorted out my living situation. You offered and I accepted. The temporary stay lasted longer than expected because I was traveling constantly for work. Conferences, meetings, development facilities. It was easier to have a home base here than to maintain my own apartment that would sit empty most of the time. You've been traveling? Jennifer asked incredulously. When? We see you here all the time. You see me here during family dinners and occasional weekends, I corrected. I'm typically traveling 3 weeks out of every month. I fly to our development facilities, attend industry conferences, meet with partners and clients. My calendar is booked solid most of the time. When I am here, I'm working remotely, attending virtual meetings and yes, monitoring the prototype equipment that was stored downstairs. The sound of car doors slamming outside made everyone jump. I glanced at my phone. That'll be our asset protection team. They made excellent time. Marcus stood up so fast his chair toppled backward. Jamie, wait. We can figure this out. I'll get the money back. I'll find the guy. We can fix this. You can't fix this, Marcus, I said, standing up and moving toward the front door. The equipment is gone. You don't know who has it. For all we know, Mike is a corporate espionage agent who now has access to technology that could compromise our competitive advantage. This isn't about the money, though $3.7 million is certainly significant. This is about proprietary technology potentially falling into the wrong hands. I opened the front door before anyone could knock. 2 men in suits stood on the porch, credentials already in hand. Behind them I could see 2 more vehicles pulling up, one unmarked sedan and one marked police cruiser. Mr. Caldwell? The first man asked, though his tone suggested he already knew the answer. I'm Agent Rodriguez with Meridian Innovations Corporate Security Division. This is Agent Chen. We need to speak with Marcus Caldwell regarding the unauthorized sale of company property. Come in, I said, stepping aside. My family is in the dining room. As the agents entered, followed by 2 uniformed police officers, I watched my family's faces transform from confusion to genuine fear. Marcus had gone completely white. Dad stood up, his hand instinctively reaching for Mom's shoulder. Jennifer looked like she might be sick. Agent Rodriguez took in the scene with professional efficiency. Marcus Caldwell? Marcus raised his hand slightly like a child in school. That's me. Mr. Caldwell, we need to ask you some questions about items you sold this morning. Items that were the property of Meridian Innovations, valued at approximately $3.7 million. I didn't know, Marcus said immediately, his voice cracking. I swear I didn't know what they were. I thought they were just old computer parts. Jamie never said they were important. Agent Chen pulled out a tablet, pulling up documentation. Mr. Caldwell, our records show that all items stored at this address were clearly marked with Meridian Innovations serial numbers and property tags. Did you examine any of the items before selling them? I looked at them, but I didn't really pay attention to details. I just saw old electronics. Old electronics with corporate property tags, serial numbers and in some cases, clearly visible company logos, Agent Rodriguez said, his voice flat. Mr. Caldwell, do you understand that what you've done constitutes theft and illegal sale of corporate assets? Dad stepped forward. Now wait a minute. My son made a mistake, but he didn't steal anything. Those items were in our garage. He had no reason to believe he couldn't dispose of them. Sir, Agent Chen addressed Dad respectfully, Your son sold property that did not belong to him to an unknown buyer for cash. Whether he understood the value of those items or not, the action itself is illegal. Additionally, because the items contained proprietary technology, there are federal implications regarding potential corporate espionage and technology transfer. Federal. Mom's voice was barely audible. You're saying this is a federal crime? Potentially, yes, Agent Rodriguez confirmed. We're still assessing the situation. The immediate concern is recovering the items and determining who purchased them and for what purpose. One of the uniformed officers spoke up. Mr. Marcus Caldwell, can you provide a description of the individual who purchased these items from you? Marcus sank back into his chair, his head in his hands. White guy, maybe 45, 50 years old. Average height, brown hair. He said his name was Mike. He drove a white cargo van, no markings. He paid in cash $100 bills. Did he show you identification? Business card? Any documentation? Agent Chin was typing notes rapidly on his tablet. No. Nothing. He just looked at the boxes, asked if everything was there and handed me the cash when I said yes. How did he know about the items being for sale? Agent Rodriguez asked. I posted on a tech resale forum, Marcus admitted. Just said I had vintage computer equipment and prototypes available. He responded within an hour, came out this morning and bought everything. The agents exchanged glances. Agent Rodriguez's expression grew more serious. Mr. Caldwell, you posted publicly about having prototype technology available for sale? I didn't say they were prototypes. Marcus protested. I just said they were old computer parts. I didn't know what they actually were. But you used the word prototypes in your listing, Agent Chin said, turning his tablet to show Marcus his own post. Here. Various prototypes and development hardware. That's a direct quote from your listing. Marcus stared at the screen, his face draining of color. I just thought that sounded better than old junk. I didn't think it meant anything specific. Agent Rodriguez closed his eyes briefly, a gesture that suggested he was dealing with an impressive level of incompetence. Mr. Caldwell, by advertising prototypes and development hardware, you essentially announced to anyone monitoring such listings that you had access to unreleased technology. The individual who purchased these items from you was likely specifically looking for exactly this type of opportunity. Oh God, Jennifer whispered. Marcus, what did you do? I didn't mean to. Marcus's voice was rising toward panic again. I was just trying to clean out the garage. Jamie wasn't using that stuff. It was just sitting there. It was sitting there as part of an authorized company testing program, I said quietly. Every item was exactly where it was supposed to be, being monitored and tested as part of my job responsibilities. You took it upon yourself to sell items you had no authority to sell, didn't verify ownership, didn't consult with anyone, and then advertised them publicly in a way that specifically attracted the attention of someone looking for proprietary technology. Agent Rodriguez turned to me. Mr. Caldwell, Jamie, we need you to provide us with complete documentation of everything that was taken. Serial numbers, specifications, photographs if you have them. Everything. I have comprehensive records, I confirmed. Every item was logged with photos, serial numbers, specifications, and installation dates. I also have the monitoring logs showing the exact time each item stopped transmitting data, which would be when Marcus removed them from the garage. Transmitting data? Dad asked weakly. You were monitoring them remotely? Of course, I said. They're multimillion-dollar prototypes. Did you think Meridian would just hand them over with no tracking or oversight? Each unit had monitoring capabilities. I received alerts on my phone the moment they were disconnected from power and network. I initially thought it was a power outage, but when I checked the garage security camera footage, I saw Marcus loading everything into a vehicle. You have security cameras in our garage? Mom asked. I installed them 2 years ago with your permission, Dad. Remember when I said I wanted to add some security equipment for my work? You said it was fine as long as I paid for it myself. Dad nodded slowly, memory apparently returning. I thought you meant you were going to keep a laptop locked up or something. Not millions of dollars worth of equipment. I told you I was working with valuable prototypes, I said. You said, that's nice, dear, and went back to watching football. Agent Chin had been making a phone call in the corner. He returned to the group, his expression grim. We've got our tech team pulling up the listing Marcus posted. It's been viewed over 300 times in the past 24 hours. The user who contacted Marcus used a burner email account that's already been deleted. What does that mean? Jennifer asked, though her tone suggested she already knew the answer wasn't good. It means whoever bought these items knew exactly what they were doing, Agent Rodriguez explained. They monitored online listings looking for exactly this type of opportunity, moved quickly when they found it, paid in cash to avoid any paper trail, and disappeared. This is professional-level corporate espionage. Marcus looked like he might pass out. I'm going to jail, aren't I? That depends on several factors, Agent Rodriguez said. Your cooperation, what we're able to recover, and whether the individuals who purchased the technology are caught and what they've done with it. At minimum, you're facing civil liability for the full value of the items, $3.7 million. Criminal charges are also likely, though the specific charges will depend on the ongoing investigation. $3.7 million? Mom's voice was faint. We don't have that kind of money. Nobody in this family has that kind of money. Except Jamie, apparently, Jennifer said bitterly, then caught herself. Sorry. That was uncalled for. I shrugged. It's fine. And for the record, I don't have $3.7 million in liquid assets. I have a good salary and stock options, but I couldn't write a check for that amount either. Which is why this is such a serious problem. Meridian Innovations is going to pursue recovery through every legal means available. Dad sank into his chair, looking older than I'd ever seen him. Jamie, son, I'm so sorry. We didn't know. We should have asked more questions. We should have taken your work seriously. Yes, I agreed simply. You should have. But that doesn't change the current situation. One of the uniformed officers stepped forward. Mr. Marcus Caldwell, I need you to come down to the station to provide a formal statement. You're not under arrest at this time, but we need your full cooperation with this investigation. Marcus stood on shaky legs. Can I call a lawyer? That would be advisable, Agent Rodriguez said. This is a complex case involving corporate property, potential espionage, and federal technology transfer laws. You're going to need legal representation. As Marcus was led out by the officers, Mom turned to me, tears streaming down her face. Jamie, please. He's your brother. He made a terrible mistake, but he didn't mean to hurt anyone. Is there anything you can do to help him? I considered my response carefully. Mom, I can't make this go away. Those prototypes are gone, possibly into the hands of competitors or foreign entities. Meridian has a legal obligation to pursue this case fully. However, I can make sure the company understands that Marcus acted out of ignorance rather than malice. That might help with any criminal charges. The civil liability, though, the $3.7 million, that's not something I can control. What happens if he can't pay it? Dad asked quietly. What happens to our family? Agent Chin answered before I could. Meridian Innovations will likely seek liens against any assets Marcus holds. His bank accounts will be frozen. If he's married, his spouse's assets could be affected. If he owns property, it could be seized. The company will use every legal method to recover damages. He's married, Jennifer said softly. His wife Sarah just opened a bakery 6 months ago. They bought a house last year. I closed my eyes, processing this information. Marcus and I hadn't been close in years, but I didn't take any pleasure in this situation. I'll speak with Meridian's legal team. If Marcus cooperates fully with the investigation, provides every detail he can remember, and the company is able to recover most or all of the prototypes, they might be willing to negotiate a settlement he can actually manage. Thank you, Mom whispered. Thank you, honey. Agent Rodriguez began packing up his equipment. Mr. Caldwell, Jamie, we'll need you to come to our regional office tomorrow to go through all the documentation in detail. We're also going to need access to your security camera footage and any monitoring data you have on when the items were taken. I'll have everything ready, I confirmed. I assume you'll want me to prepare a complete inventory with estimated recovery priorities? Some of those prototypes contain more sensitive technology than others. That would be extremely helpful, Agent Chin said. The faster we can prioritize what needs to be recovered first, the better our chances of minimizing damage. As the agents prepared to leave, Dad stood up and approached me. For a moment we just looked at each other. Then he pulled me into an unexpected hug. I'm proud of you, son. I should have said that a long time ago. I should have asked about your work, taken interest in what you were doing. I'm sorry I didn't. Thanks, Dad, I said quietly, returning the hug. I appreciate that. After everyone had left and it was just our immediate family again, Jennifer poured herself another glass of wine with shaking hands. So let me make sure I understand this correctly. You're a chief technology officer of a major tech company. You make what I'm guessing is a substantial salary. You've been working on prototype technology worth millions of dollars. And you've been living in your childhood bedroom while we all treated you like a failure. Is that about right? That's accurate, I confirmed. Why didn't you defend yourself? She asked. Why didn't you tell us to shut up when we made jokes about your consulting work or your failed startup? I thought about that for a moment. Because I didn't need to prove myself to you. I knew what I was doing, I knew my work was valuable, and I was content with that. Your opinions of my success didn't change my actual success. They just revealed more about your assumptions than about my reality. Mom wiped her eyes. That's a lonely way to live, honey. We're your family. You should be able to share your achievements with us. I tried at first, I reminded her gently. 3 years ago when I first moved back, I explained about the acquisition, about my position with Meridian, about the prototype testing program. Do you remember what you said, Mom? She shook her head, fresh tears forming. You said, that's nice, honey, but don't get your hopes up. The tech industry is very unstable. Then you changed the subject to ask if I'd met any nice girls lately. The silence that followed was heavy with regret. I think, Dad said slowly, we owe you more than just an apology for not taking you seriously. We owe you an apology for creating an environment where you felt you couldn't share your life with us. I accept that apology, I said. And I hope that going forward we can have a different kind of relationship. One where you ask questions before making assumptions. Jennifer set down her wine glass. Jamie, what's going to happen to Marcus? Really? Honestly? I don't know, I admitted. Best case scenario, we recover all the prototypes quickly, the buyer turns out to be just a reseller who didn't know what he had, and Meridian agrees to a payment plan Marcus can manage over many years. Worst case scenario, the prototypes are already being analyzed by competitors or foreign entities, we can't recover them, and Marcus faces both substantial criminal charges and the full $3.7 million liability. And you can't stop any of that, she said. It wasn't a question. I can influence some of it by advocating for Marcus within the company, but no, I can't stop the legal process. Meridian has investors, board members, and legal obligations. This isn't just about me and my brother anymore. This is about corporate espionage, federal technology crimes, and millions of dollars in stolen assets. Dad stood up, looking exhausted. Your mother and I are going to drive down to the police station to be there when Marcus is done giving his statement. Would you come with us? I considered declining. I had work to do, documentation to prepare, and honestly I was emotionally drained. But I saw the plea in my father's eyes, the desperate hope that somehow family could still matter after everything that had happened today. Yeah, I said finally. I'll come with you. As we drove to the police station in Dad's car, my phone buzzed constantly with messages from Meridian's legal team, security division, and various executives who had been briefed on the situation. Each message reminded me of the scale of what had happened, the potential consequences, and my responsibility as CTO to protect the company's interests. But sitting in the back seat of my father's car, watching my parents process the reality of their son's situation, I was reminded that I also had responsibilities as a brother. Responsibilities I'd neglected in my frustration with being underestimated and dismissed. Maybe if I'd been more insistent about explaining my work, more forthcoming about the value of what I was protecting, Marcus would have known better than to see those boxes as disposable junk. Maybe if I'd pushed back harder against the family's assumptions about my failure, they would have understood the importance of asking before acting. Or maybe Marcus would have sold the equipment anyway because he'd always been the type to act first and think later, and no amount of explanation would have changed his fundamental approach to life. I didn't know. What I did know was that a Sunday family dinner had just destroyed my brother's life, potentially compromised my company's competitive advantage, and forced my family to confront years of assumptions about success, failure, and the value of asking questions before making judgments. As we pulled into the police station parking lot, I looked at the message from Meridian Sue. Jamie, I need you to understand, this isn't personal, but we have to pursue this fully. Our board is already demanding action. I hope your family understands. I typed back, I understand. I'll cooperate completely. But for the record, I'm going to advocate for my brother anyway. It's possible to fulfill my professional obligations while still being a brother. I'll find a way to do both. His response came quickly. I wouldn't expect anything less from you. That's why you're our CTO. Good judgment isn't just about technology, it's about people too. I stepped out of the car, squared my shoulders, and walked into the police station with my parents. The next few months were going to be complicated, painful, and difficult. But at least finally my family understood who I really was. Even if it took the worst possible circumstances to get there.